So this recording was made. This is more. We're throwing stories at you, throwing beautiful stories at you. This is recorded 1998 after we had been spending time in fellowship a lot with the Charismatic Episcopal Church. Randolph Adler, look him up. He was raised Charismatic Pentecostal, and he realized, what about the sacramental church? Those people kind of have a balance and a steadiness and a faithfulness to them. What about the evangelicals? How come the charismatics and the evangelicals and the sacramentals can't get together? So he started this movement called the Charismatic Episcopal Church, which had a proper Eucharist and lots of miracle signs and wonders, and people actually going out and, being messengers on the street, not just like huddling up with their own little Christian group. We had just been spending time fellowshipping with a Church of Christ group, and that Church of Christ group was basically trying to avoid anything weird or supernatural. And they were literally teaching that we shouldn't look for miracles, we shouldn't focus on miracles, and the supernatural stuff is not going on anymore because now we have the Bible and other kind of sketchy things that are actually lies. So Mom is about to address this problem of the church that we were in, the International Churches of Christ, who were touching many people's lives with the scriptures and a lot of other stuff, but they were avoiding another essential atmosphere.
With their lips, but their hearts are far from me. But I started meeting people whose hearts were close to God, and yet there was still something missing until very lately, when the blending of the miraculous was recognized.
Now, wasn't there a period of time where you were gathering with some wonderful people who love God, who were teaching very consistently that none of that stuff was going on anymore?
That's true. They were teaching that the signs and wonders died out with the apostles, with the first generation Christians, and that possibly towards the very end of the age, church age, quote unquote, when Christ was about to return, that these would again come. But at this point in time, no, there were no such things as miracles anymore.
So Mom was actually standing with the leadership of this church, and they were teaching people that miracle signs and wonders weren't going on, and she had personally experienced miracle signs and wonders in a lot of situations. So she was kind of keeping her mouth shut and just following along with another cultural church atmosphere. And this is why Father, the Sweet One, the Spirit above all things, is telling me, don't sit down and hold hands with ordinary church culture people anymore. I want you to build in the home and on the street and let people actually taste all of the goodies, not just part of them.
Kind of upset when I heard about this miraculous thing that had happened to you, because I thought, now, how could you have possibly sat among teaching that basically denied what actually happened to you? How did you reconcile that?
Not very well. I was a hypocrite, because I at times remembered having spoken in tongues, and out of fear of not being like the rest of them, I didn't say, but I know that this is possible, and it's nothing wrong with it, and it's scriptural.
Out of fear of not being like the rest of them. Go, Mommy, go. Oh, bless that girl.
Take a stand. I think mainly because
denied what actually happened to you. How did you reconcile that?
not very well. I was a hypocrite, because I at times remembered having spoken in tongues, and out of fear of not being like the rest of them, I didn't say, but I know that this is possible, and it's nothing wrong with it, and it's scriptural. and I didn't take a stand. I think mainly because I was afraid of being pushed out of what I saw as a very mature discipling group and getting into charismania that I now had experienced because in another group I was in, and I don't want to mention its name, I was invited to several charismatic churches, and there was too much close hugging and things that looked to me like it was sexually derived, and that to leave this other group that had a holy love for each other would get me into problems that I had experienced that were sinful, and I didn't want to expose myself to that, even though they spoke in tongues.
Now, the interesting thing about this is each one of us has our own personal experiences and troubles. And my mother had been actually enticed into situations that she couldn't resist in many situations and times and ways. There's other people who have had incredibly violent things happen to them, and bitter-tongued people have condemned them and rejected them, and everyone reacts differently to different things. Some people need hugs because they never got any of them at home. Some people, like my mom, are wary of hugs because she knows what they lead to in her own life. And so it's interesting that she stayed away from charismatic peoples, partly because of their open-hearted closeness and tenderness. They're not quite as standoffish and fearful. It's very interesting.
Neither fish nor fowl for a long while. I didn't dare, I thought, get into this hugging group that I watched from the corners of my eyes, and I saw the sexual interaction between men and women that weren't married and stuff as part of the worship. And I rebelled against it and recoiled, rather. I recoiled from that, so I stayed quietly in my non-charismatic, non-tongue-speaking group to be safe from sexual sins. And I'm glad you asked that question, because I never explained that to you before. Mm-hmm. In fact, I never thought it through clearly. But I had a gut reaction about this that was very, very strong.
Now, also...
There's a lady looking at...
Okay, so, all right, now, do you remember...
So, that's good for this segment. This is a really interesting thing for me to hear these words come from my mother. I kind of had forgotten them. And I made this recording right after she had told me about speaking in tongues for the first time. I'm like, Mom, you need to tell like your whole story. I need to find out if there's anything else that's like missing, because like if I'm going to do this God stuff, I want to have everything on properly. I don't want to live in another 30 years like in some kind of half-baked church group that's not really doing the right stuff. So that's why I did this interview, and now I get to share it with you. All the best, everybody. Hold on tight.